I do. Well, yeah, and I was telling Karen and Dana both, I really am. I'm such a believer now. I'm not a perfect person, nor any of us in here. So it really means you have to practice this a lot. And when you find yourself kind of stepping away or getting frustrated or getting anxious, that's still part of, all of us get that way. But then if we practice the skills of conscious discipline, no kidding, it really brings you back to the center and brings about what you're doing. So saying that, let me give you a little bit of background too. Even though I'm here at UT, is where our office is, we actually cover 21 counties. So we cover a lot of territory in East and Upper East areas, and so we're all over the place. But before I did that, I actually was a preschool center director for 10 years. So I don't want you to think that I'm standing up here thinking, yeah, she can talk about that stuff. But does she really understand? I fully understand, because I taught forever, and then I was a center director, and I actually was a center-based director with a church that's actually further west from here for 10 years, but I also did Head Start 3 different times. And then I did a corporate child care center. That was my first job, fresh out of college with no experience. That was interesting, and I lasted for at least 3 years there, and that was all I could possibly do. and then went into Head Start different ways, wound up back here in Knoxville, and then at Head Start again, and then went into CCR&R. So I've loved it. It gives me a lot of flexibility, but I love just opportunities to be able to come out and meet with different programs. But probably my major passion behind all of that is what we're taking and doing with children every single day. That's the whole reason why I live this. I've lived it for over 37 years. So, and I actually have 2 children of my own. I have, my oldest son is 33, and my youngest son is 29, and I'm also a grandmother now. It is the best thing ever. I just never knew how much you could love a child. I love my boys, but I really love my grandson. And they're kind of offended when I talk about that, but there's just nothing like a grandchild. And it's interesting because I didn't have conscious discipline when I was raising our boys. I only have had the knowledge of it for about the last 8 years, and so I'm doing it with my grandson all the time. And my husband has heard me talk about it enough that when he watches me, and he does it too, and he said, if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. And because I can yak, and then until you do it, and you kind of go, so that's how it works. It's wonderful. So saying all that I can have a full appreciation for your job, because you have one of the toughest jobs ever. Working with children is not easy. And it really takes a sense of loving what you do, but it's beyond loving. I mean, it is so, you can love children, but if you don't have a skill set, you're not going to get much further than that. You're going to get very frustrated. So conscious discipline really does put in place a way to kind of take and understand children better. And understand ourselves, because the most important part in all of this is we have to know a lot more about ourselves. It's what we take and do day in and day out is whether children become successful or not. We really are the key to that. We can't change what a child is doing. We can't change who they are, but we can change the response based on what we're thinking, feeling, and what we're downloading in them. And so that's a big piece of this. And I will say this too, that and I don't think I said it already, that I was lucky enough, when I say I started about 8 years ago, I actually got to go to Florida and train with Becky Bailey for an intensive, and I mean intensive, 6 days. It was incredible. And it was from the moment we woke up until we actually got to do what's it called when you do the whole, everybody shows up and starts dancing at one time, a flash mob. We all went together and did a flash mob over at Disney World. It was awesome. So it's just, and it's interesting because you have to also know a little bit about Becky Bailey. She's not this woman that's full of wisdom and self-confidence, no, not at all. And she actually had a pretty rocky relationship with her family growing up, so she didn't come from this wonderful, sensitive family that surrounded her with love. It was very different. And so she was wired differently, but as she moved kind of through her experiences, and then with her research and all that she's done, then she developed conscious discipline, because I think she saw the need to pay it forward with what she was learning and how we could all learn from what she's gleaned. So she was smart enough to put a trademark on it too, so that's how it is. Okay, so here's your hot button activity. Think about, for a minute, things that push your buttons with children. Does anybody ever get upset about things that kids do? I like that little nervous, like, yeah. I'm not going to say it out loud, but yes, there are things that children do that push my buttons. Anybody have anything that is a button pusher for you that you'd like to say out loud?
I don't want to.
Okay. Well, I can tell you some of the things that people will say is, well, I don't like it when children yell. I don't like it when children spit. I don't like it when children bite other children. I don't like it when children talk back. I don't like it when they tell me no. I don't like it when they say, you're not my mommy. I don't like it when they say, I'm not be your friend. All the things that go into wiring. And what I'll have teachers also say too is, I've heard, they don't pay me enough money to do this job. If only I could have the parents come in here and understand what it's like every single day, then they would be able to parent better and I could teach them something. Let's see, well, there's just a number of things, and maybe I'll allude to some of them as I go through, but here you go, here's kind of our start. If children come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job just a whole lot easier. But if they don't come to us from strong, healthy families, it makes our job more important. And honestly, the older that I've gotten, I somehow had this dream in my head, I don't know why, but probably 30 years ago, that I would look around at other people that were raising their children and I think, gosh, they do so much better than me. Why do they? They're such a good parent. I'm such a stinky parent. What is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I have all this stuff in early ed. That's what I know, child development, all these things I know. And yet there were things that I would question what my parenting skills would look like. And what I've begun to know now is, as a grandmother, and lots of years I look around and I think, we all are messing up things. I mean, it's just a part of life. It's the way it is. There are no wonderful families to hold up in high esteem. They may look great on the outside, but they'd be messed up on the inside. Everybody goes through stuff. That's just life. And so we need to kind of know that all the children that come to us are equally as important. They all have issues. They all have things. And I don't know about you all. Is everybody a parent in here? Does everybody have the privilege? When you get that privilege and opportunity to be a parent, it's so different. Because I can remember before I had children of my own, I just kept thinking and I'm not saying that this is what you would do, this was my feeling. My feeling was one of judgment. And when I would watch people parent, I would think, well, when I become a parent, kind of that sanctimonious kind of feeling. Well, when I became a parent, I can remember when my first son, I cried all the time, and Clay would do something, and I'd be like, why is he? So that I would cry, and then he would cry more. Why do you think he was crying more? Why was he crying more when I was crying? Why was that? It's conscious discipline. It is so conscious discipline.
What you focus on, you get more of.
What you focus on, you get more of. That's exactly right. And I was downloading fear. I was so downloading fear to him because I didn't have a clue. And every time I'd think I'd have it licked, then I would do something else and he'd do something. Thank goodness he was a fairly calm child, because if I had had my second one first, he would have been an only child. There's just no doubt that Cameron would have been an only, because he rocked my world. And I actually had a me. And so that's the reason why my second go-around was a child wired just like me. And you all know that probably most of the time the characteristics that sometimes drive you crazy are the things that you don't like about yourself. It can be. Okay. So think about it. Every morning that you wake up is just another chance to get it right. And really with conscious discipline, you have to be forgiving with yourself. You can't be on 24/7. You've got to try and be the best you can be. Children really want somebody to show up. It doesn't matter to them that you had a hard morning. That's not important to them because they want you there. Children are not wired with coping. They don't have all coping skills that from an adult perspective we have. So we need to know that if we've had a really rough morning, if you have to call Karen and say, I've had a really rough morning, I'm going to sit in my car for 5 minutes and I'm going to be a star. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to get my composure. I'm going to encourage myself, put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to show up for my children in what they need. Then you're going to have a much better day. But you know that if you hit the door and you come in and you say to everybody, including the children that are in your care, I've had such a bad day today, you just can't believe all that's happened to me. And pretty soon, what happens if that talk comes out? What happens? Everybody goes down the toilet with you. It's like, and somebody, you could have had a teammate. Do you all team teach? You could have a team teacher that was really she's great. She was doing awesome. And then you came in and said, I just don't feel good. I didn't sleep well at all last night. And then they're like, you know, my head's hurting. Now that you say that. That's really good conscious discipline, because again, it's that part you're downloading what it is they're feeling. So it's a really, conscious discipline is very, very big. She was just smart enough to put a label on what it is that we're doing. So that's why I want you to think it's really like a global message that's out there. So, okay, remember when, and this is what I want you to do, is think about a time when you were a child and you were disciplined or you were punished. How did it make you feel? Did your behavior change? Why or why not? Anybody? Anybody have an incident of something when you think, yes, I can remember that. So if it was an incident of, because I can tell y'all are not going to say anything out loud, maybe because of this. But in saying that, I'm gonna share with you a sad story, and Dana's heard this story. She probably heard it more than she cares to hear about it, but I'm going to repeat it because it bears worth repeating. Because I know I don't look like I'm almost 60 years old. I have to keep telling myself that, but I will say that this happened to me when I was 6 years old. So that's why I want to put that in perspective, to tell you that I can remember it now like it was yesterday. Very important. So I had a first grade teacher who probably should not have been a teacher. And her method was not discipline, it was punishment. And what she would do is she would have, if you broke a rule, and she had about 1 million of them, if you broke a rule, she would have you put your head down on the desk. Now this is back, we didn't go to school in horse and buggy, but it sounds close, because it was back in the early 60s that we would put our heads down on wooden desks. And what would she do next? Does anybody want to guess what she would do next? Anybody guesses?
Get the ruler out.
Get the ruler out. Now that would have been fairly nice. Would have been better than this. What? Anybody else want to guess?
Tell the other kids why your head was down?
That would have been really nice. That would have been nice.
Pull your hair.
No, but that would have been nicer. That would have been nicer too. Anybody? She would sit on your head.
Oh, no.
Look at Yeah. Okay, so how do you think I liked first grade after that?
My word.
No. And so obviously it was, and then what was interesting was, as my own children grew in elementary school and they'd come home and say, that teacher's so mean. Or I'd say, she's not fair. And I'd say, so tell me about what she did. And I said, because if it's something that's not fair, certainly I'm going to go and we're going to talk about it and see what we can figure out. But when I would tell them the Miss Kirby story, because I told them, they were like, and so as they started to get older, Mom, please don't bring up Miss Kirby again. Please don't talk about her, because I always said, if you think mean, let me tell you what mean looks like. But I can tell you that for me, and I would suspect everybody in here, anything that a teacher did to make you feel bad about yourself, to make you feel like you weren't worthy of being taught, all those things that go into it, you're going to remember that a whole lot more than you are all the niceties that you heard over the years. You may recall those nice things, but the things that were pretty horrific are going to stay with you. And I say that because I must have also suppressed this memory, because I didn't remember anything about her until I took my sons to go see the movie Matilda.
Oh, yes. Oh, she's evil.
And when Miss Trunchbull, for whatever, it was like, all of a sudden I had just all these emotions that came back in, and I started remembering everything about her, down to her clothes, her orthopedic shoes, her lips were like this big around, because she never smiled. Ever. And so once they figured out that we had been, because all of us started, because people say, well, didn't you do anything? Well, yeah, you go home, but truly, if anybody's from the 60s, children were seen and not heard. That's really kind of the way it was managed. And so even though I went home and said things, and my mother would say, now, sugar, are you sure that's what, how do you exaggerate somebody sitting on people's heads? I remember these conversations. And so they retired her at the end, but the damage had been done. The damage was done because as a 59-year-old, 53 years ago, or 54, I can recall her so well. But they took us collectively as a group, moved us into second grade. I'm sure we were like a little rehab group that they thought we all knew, because we didn't like school. And so moved us in with Miss Street, who actually smiled, prettiest teeth. I can remember her teeth, her hot pink lipstick, her really pretty lips. But those were things that for me were huge, and it really is a part of conscious discipline, because no matter what has been in our lives coming in, it's a part of how we adapt and move with conscious discipline too, because our world and what we have in us to know things that have impacted us really do come to the plate when it comes into working with children. And so we can be a great conscious discipline person, but in order to be able to practice it, it's like we have to think about those things that have happened, but then we have to know there's a better way of doing things. Obviously, there's a whole lot better ways of doing things other than that. And it really is about gaining self-control. That's the reason why I talk about stories like that. It's important to really own and feel ways that we feel and take and work with children. The ways we work with families is huge, absolutely huge. How it is that we take every day and greet the children and the families as they come in, they're worth that. They are worth that. You may be the one positive impact that somebody sees the entire day. You know, we often don't know what happens to them when they're away from us. And again, when I say that families look like they just look like they're functioning so well, and yet at home things are pretty messed up. And parents, teachers, anybody can be fooled that children don't sense when there are things going on. People say, we don't argue around the children, or we don't. Do children know what's going on? Do they sense? They absolutely have a sense for that. They may not be able to know exactly what it is, but they sense it. And we're going to talk about how can they sense it, because are they brilliant children? Are they brilliant children?
Well, of course.
Okay. Well, we know so much more about the brain now, and that's the remarkable thing. We didn't know all this for so long. We suspected, but you know, in any kind of study, we have to have things out. Developing all these things with kind of the brain. I mean, she didn't develop the brain. She just started defining it better to know what those parts of the brain look like. So you all are familiar with, when you see this diagram, you know all these parts and everything. But it's still really important, because we know that young children always tend to believe or stay somewhere between the red and the blue. It's very difficult. They can jump into the green somewhat, but not a lot. And why is that young children, I'm talking about children under the age of 6, have a hard time staying up in the cognitive functioning part? Why is that? Anybody know? It's really an important part to understanding this, because this is the piece. Children that are under the age of about 5.5 up to 6, they're all concrete thinkers. They have to see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, taste it again, touch it again, do all this. That's really how they learn about their environment. And so it can be that you might think that you are wonderful at talking about your classroom rules, about how it is that we take care of each other, or what it is that we take and do. And children can spit it right back at you. They can say, yes, whether you're using inside voice or if you've adopted the rules about just that we're keeping each other safe. But if they don't know how to do that and what that looks like, then they can tell you what it is, but they can't act on it. That's the difference. They really are concrete thinkers. So then they become pretty abstract when they get to about age 6, and they start to then begin to stay more in the green. But if they never feel safe, if they're not in the mode of where they feel safe and secure here, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel that sense of connection, they will seldom ever make it up here. And they'll tend to stay more here in the brainstem and jump between the blue and the red, because they just have such a hard time connecting. And I always think about behavior issues with children that are, I don't want to classify them repeat offenders, but it's somewhat like that. And it's because there's just so much going on in their world. And if we're not that stabilizing force here, then it just complicates it even more. Questions about anything so far as I get through this? Okay. All right, so here's your state that unconsciously dictates behavior. So what is it that we know that as any of us can do? And the best I can say is that if somebody, like if you walk into a space and you say, man, it was so tense in there. You could cut the tension. You could feel it. You could cut the tension with a knife. You know, when you've heard people say that. Why is that? Is that because somebody was up there with knives and why is that? Why would somebody say that? What would make them feel that way?
Body language.
Okay, and let's say, because body language can dictate that, but I'm going to tell you, what if there is no body language, no language coming out, no nonverbal cues? Why would anybody feel it?
Facial expression?
no facial expressions. There is nothing coming. I'm going to say people do that, but if you had nothing, why would you still feel the tension?
Because we're relational.
Because we're relational. And there is a new thing, well, it's been out maybe 4 or 5 years. It's called mirror neurons. This is awesome. Because teacher bad mood, no matter what it is, and this is the best way I can explain it, and this is how Becky Bailey explains it. I was thinking, would that be just like me? If you took a CD, and I know that CDs are going to be passé pretty soon too, but if you took a CD and you popped it into your head, downloaded it right here, and you push play, whatever is going through your brain is what you're downloading. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to sigh. You don't have to roll your eyes. You don't have to do any of that. It's strictly what this is thinking is what you're downloading. Does that make sense? So that's why you have to really be conscious. That's the whole thing about conscious discipline. You really have to be fully aware of what's going on up here because you can't pretend. You can't fake it. There's just too much for children to pick up on. And when parents, if they say they're having problems but the kids don't know, the children may not have to hear anything, but they sense something, that they can feel it. And that's why, that's what mirror neurons are all about. So we all have the capability for mirror neurons, we all have it. But it's just really important to know that that's why that's coming across that way. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because Karen had told me you all have done the video series over the last year, so I don't want to go into it, but I'm going to go into pieces of it and give you some stories behind what I've done and why I've done it. And then if there's questions as I'm going along and explaining something, please stop me because I really want to know. I want to get you fully engaged in this. And if there's something you've tried that you think, I'm not quite sure about that, really, we'll turn off the camera for questions or whatever. I don't want you to think that you can't ask. I want you to feel comfortable doing that. Okay, so this is going to be your buy-in to success. Has anybody seen this? This is my very favorite thing about conscious discipline. And if you wonder whether it can work, this should sell conscious discipline to everybody, everywhere. This is, it's just about a 10-minute snippet. It's about DJ Batiste. Does anybody know anything about Head Start? Does anybody know what Head Start is?
Because when I worked in Oak Ridge, that was part of our fund. We had Head Start and Title I
Together
Yeah.
in the Oak Ridge schools
Yeah.
that are at the preschool.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So if you don't know what Head Start is a federally funded program that is for children primarily in low-income areas. Like in Knoxville, there are 850 children that are enrolled in Knoxville Head Start. They may in a home visiting program. There's center-based programs that are all over Knoxville. There's a home visiting program that comes west. They have a migrant program as well. They also actually serve 10% of their population is inclusion-based. But it's a comprehensive program, and it is very in tune to children with all sorts of different abilities and disabilities. It's very good about getting services for children who need early intervention. So it's been around since the early, I guess it's 67, 68. It's been around for a really, really long time. No, 65. It's President Johnson. Okay, so saying that, so it's a tried and true program. Evidence-based, been around forever. DJ, to give you a little bit, because I wanted to explain what it was so you could understand this when you start watching this. DJ was actually expelled from Head Start. Now, to me, that means that's the ultimate, and nobody could apparently meet what DJ needed. So to say that he was, and he doesn't actually say it in this, but I know this because it's in another video, and I know with Becky Bailey. But anyway, so I want you to kind of understand that he was one of those children that everybody counted out. Okay? So, and conscious discipline didn't change his world. Guess how old he was when conscious discipline changed him, who he was. Because remember I said he got expelled as a 4-year-old.
I didn't even think you could expel them.
Oh, I know, that's what I said. It had to really be an extreme case. You want to guess how old he was when conscious discipline entered his world? He was 18 years old, senior in high school. He actually had a teacher that you're going to meet on this video that was conscious discipline trained. Her name is Miss Porter. So it's just 10 minutes, but it's good stuff. And I want to make sure I can adjust the sound so I don't blow you out, but I want you to hear. off the screen a little bit, but then you'll be able to see him and them talking and her talking. I don't know why it's doing that.
My name is DJ Baptiste, and I was born in Lacombe, Louisiana. I was raised by my grandmother. I was born to a 14-year-old mom and a 16-year-old dad, so they were young. They really weren't able to make too many decisions. I was very defiant, though. I hated it. I loved to get in trouble because getting in trouble got your attention. I was the type of student where I loved attention, and I did whatever it took to get attention. I was the leader of a gang. And let me tell you why, because in a gang, we got a sense of security and a sense of belonging. We feel like these my homies, they gonna take care of me, they got me, no matter what. So that give us that sense of belonging. Fight. That was our only option. We had a disagreement, we fought. Whether we playing basketball, playing hide and go seek, it didn't matter. If there's a disagreement, we fight. So I was raised like that, and that was instilled in my head. There wasn't no other option. You fight. You have to be violent. And I'm gonna tell you, we like to fight in school because we know we had a crowd, so we continue to get kicked out of school. We jump people. I mean, just so much violence. I never was a second thought. When it came to my head, that's what I did. If I wanted to fight, boom, I'm fighting. If you're close enough where I can put my hands on you, I'm hitting you in your mouth. That's just how I was. I did go to juvenile twice. Me and my homeboy was riding one time. We got pulled over by the police. The police found some pistols in the trunk, pistols up under the seat. And we weren't even headed to out of all the times we done had guns on us, headed to go do something, the police never stopped us. But this time we were just riding around with the guns, and they stopped us. And they confiscated all the guns and took us down, took the guns. And, yeah, pretty bad. It was my first day of my senior year of school, and everybody was always telling me, since you hate school so much and you're ready to get out of school, then why don't you just go ahead and put forth a little effort and finish your senior year? And I didn't look at it like that. I looked at school as a place of that's where I can associate. This one I can make people laugh. I can be a leader still because people want to see me. People want to follow me. I can look at girls, and if anything is going on between the hours of 8 and 3, it's gonna happen in school. So I didn't want to miss it. So that was my little motivation for school, to go to school, because I didn't want to miss anything. And I walked in Miss P class, that's what I call it, Miss P class late.
My name is Donna Porter, and I teach public speaking at Picayune Memorial High School in Picayune, Mississippi.
I sat back and thought about it. When you late to something, everybody looks at you.
And all of a sudden the door flings open and this huge student that I've never seen in my life walks in and says,
"What's up?" And she looked. And I said, "What's up?" You know, and I just had the attention of the class that bad.
My first thought is, why did this happen to me? First day of school when I'm trying to set the tone. And then I thought, I've got this. Thank goodness I've got this. But to be able to access my brilliance, I have to take a deep breath. Stay composed.
She's wrestling.
Look at his nonverbal language, because all behavior is purposeful.
She said, "Well, I noticed you late to my room. There's no problem because you probably couldn't find it." I just kind of looked at her with this crazy look like, whatever. And she was like, "Well, have a seat." And I looked at her, I said, "Do you have any kids?"
And I said, well, actually, your name is DJ, Mr. Baptiste. I have 2, and I just informed the class about it, but because you missed my room, you didn't hear. So are you married? He said. And I said, actually, I just told the class I've been married for 30 years.
I stepped back and said, 30 years? Folded my arms, looked up and down and said, "Don't you think it's time for a change?" Now, at that point in time right there, I expected her to get red in the face, lose her composure, run to her desk, get a referral, write me up and send me out. I was ready for that. That's what I expected. And now that I've learned the brain seeks patterns. So that was the pattern that my brain was seeking. You be disrespectful, you get sent out of class, but you get the attention that you want. She didn't do that. She looked at me, she smiled and said,
"Do you go to the doctor when you're well?" And he looked at me very funny. He said, "No, you go when you're sick." I said, "You come to school when you know everything?" He said, I guess not. I guess you come supposedly to learn. I said, well, you've got a lot to learn and I can't wait to teach you. And then I left him with that feeling of angst. And then I said, you know what I noticed more importantly about you? You have charisma.
Charisma. You know, she was like, do you know what that means? I said, I'm cute. And everybody in the class laughed. And she was like, something like that. She was like, but you just know how to work a room, you know? And I said, I was just listening to her. She was like, she threw me out because she started talking good about me after I wanted her to be kind of get into a power struggle with me. That's what I wanted.
And I said, so I've been thinking in the last few seconds, I give jobs to my students in high school. Do you know anything about jobs in school? He said, oh yeah. In kindergarten, I was the line leader. I said, we don't have a line leader in high school. We have appropriate jobs. And I usually take a week or so to figure out what job would best fit what student. I do a multiple intelligence survey, and we tell a little bit about ourselves. But you know what, DJ? I don't need to do all that with you. Because you're innately designed to be a greeter. He's like, a greeter? What's that? And I said, a greeter is someone that will stand at my door every morning.
As everybody come in, I get to shake everybody's hand, appropriately hug the girls. And then she said, on top of that, I get to come in front of her class and have my own session for 2 to 3 minutes. How does that sound? That's what she said. I said, it sounds too good to be true, so let me run it back to you. I said, so you mean to tell me I get to stand outside your classroom, shake everybody's hand who comes by, then on top of that, I get to come in front of the class and have my own session? She was like, yeah. I said, well, I want, you know what I'm saying, I want to try this. She was like, but it's one catch. And I remember I dropped my head like I knew it was something, you know.
All you have to do is be on time.
Because if you're my greeter, that means you have to be the first one here so everybody get a chance to see you and shake your hand before they walk in my classroom. And I just remember shaking my head like, all right, I try this, you know. I see what it's something here. I can't tell yet, but it was something there, and I just remember thinking I tried it. And she said, okay, pick up your backpack that you threw down and go have a seat. And that was the first day of my new life.
Day 2, I'm standing in the hall and I see this mass of people just partying, and the only figurative language I could think of is Moses parting the Red Sea. And here comes this huge guy, and I hear these words that are so important for anybody watching this video. Everybody move out of my way. I've got to get to Miss Porter's class on time because, listen, I have a job to do. I have a job to do. A disconnected child is a discouraged child. He needed to be encouraged, and every day he stood from day 2 of school. He had been in school out isolation, out of school suspension. Nothing worked. All he needed was to be encouraged. And he became my greeter. We usually have jobs just every 9 weeks, but by a unanimous vote of the class, he became the year-long greeter because they felt nobody could do the job as well as DJ.
I feel like the experiences that I went through in my life was meant to happen so I can come back and help kids, help teachers understand. I feel like I have a gift that I need to share, a testimony that I would like to share, and I know I can help kids along with teachers. Oftentimes teachers get into it with students, they have problems with students because they don't have the skills. And I feel like anytime I can help a teacher get the skills, she has a chance to save a life. And I often tell teachers, I want you to have the same success story that Miss Porter had. I want you to have that student that you walk down the aisle with to that graduation. I want you to have that student that say he owes his life to you. And the only reason she has that is because she had the skills of conscious discipline. So anything that's dealing with conscious discipline, I'm all for it.
from every time when I watched that, and I probably have watched it, I don't know, 40 or 50 times at least. Of course, I always have to think, okay, don't cry, because I always want to cry, and I usually do cry, and I have to do the whole practicing not to cry, because when he says, to me, it's the most profound thing that he says is that's the first day of my new life. And I just think, as an 18-year-old, and she didn't have to go through, think of what she did. She turned him, but everything she knew about conscious discipline, and she twisted it, it was just so quick. And her response was not to take, but also too, her success for that was because she downloaded the feeling of she was composed, she was encouraging. Everything about it that she was doing is that download, that mirror neuron that was going down. So for him, he didn't get the response, just like when she was saying, your brain pattern seeks. He couldn't get what he wanted. She kind of shocked him. And then when he thought there was the kicker was going to be some kind of condition to when he was going to be able to be the greeter, he thought, oh yeah, that's right, I knew there was going to be something attached to it. And then there was nothing other than showing up on time. Sounds so easy, doesn't it? I mean, it just sounds, but I watched that and I just think, what a difference could have been made if somebody had a little bit of time with DJ early on. And we tend to focus on behaviors. That's the direct opposite of conscious discipline, is focusing on things we don't want instead of focusing on what we want. And so we'll look at those just a little bit. What I want to do is, because kind of seeing DJ always takes me to a part of brain development to really have an understanding for the fact, and it's not to stereotype, but it's really to have a true understanding to say there is a big difference between boys and girls. Would we all say amen to that? And in our profession, particularly in early childhood, if not the entire education system, but in early childhood I would say that we probably have 99% female teachers. Would you agree to that? In your classroom, do you have 99% girls? No. No, more times than not, you have half and half, and sometimes I know in pre-K classrooms, you have, if you had a potential for 18 children, you could have 16 boys and 2 girls, right? You could sometimes have, does that sound familiar? Oh, is it? Is it really? Is that what you have?
Yeah, 2 girls.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Did I know any of that? I am so you're downloading to me. I can feel this. It's like, I can feel it. But that's typical. When you have a pattern where children may miss the kindergarten cutoff or they may need an extra year, it's more common to have that. And it's funny because I had a really good friend of mine that teaches, that's taught for a really long time, and it's probably been a couple of years ago now. She taught pre-K, and she called me, and she had never even met these children, and she said, "You are not going to believe this. I have 16 boys out of 18. I only have 2 girls." And I said, okay. And she said, well, why are you saying it like that? Why are you? And I said, well, now, I'm the mother of boys, so I would love that. I would absolutely love that. That to me is just fun to even think about it. And she said, well, I just can't believe it. I remember seeing some of these kids on the playground and started talking through all the reasons why it was going to be a fail. And I said, so you haven't really been with these kids yet, right? And she said, no. And so she always, because people know I taught conscious discipline to the nth degree, and I said, okay, we're going to work on this. And I said, one thing is you've got to change your mindset, because you've already given up and you've not even met these children yet. And I said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually the mother of 2 boys as well, right? And she said, yes! And so, but I think we tend to get away from knowing what we know or being fearful of something, and then it's almost like we give up before we've ever even started. And there's just too much, but we have to look at it differently. And so I think it's really important to appreciate the differences. Have you all ever done the spaghetti waffles theory? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Well, let me just say this. Here's my sidebar conversation. Here's my sidebar, but I'm going to give it to you anyway because it's really valuable. That if you ever have time, it's really comical, but it's true to look up how differently we really are wired. And it kind of goes back to, remember the book with women are from, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's along the same kind of line as that, but this is your visual. That women's brains look kind of like spaghetti, and guys' brains look like waffles. And so when you visualize the difference, what do you visualize about what a waffle looks like? Compartments. Boxes. It's all about boxes. Yeah. It's all about boxes for guys. And with women, everything is related to something else. So it's then when you think about a plate of spaghetti, everything overlaps everything. Well, and actually, before I do the little boy brains, girl brains. It's a little 2-minute snippet that I could show you just to give you it's a hot tip is what I'm telling you. Because when I found out about this, I was like, man, I really wished I'd had that information, because when I would have somebody called it, what did she call it? Intense fellowship is what she called it. I said, I've called it heated discussions with my husband about things. Then had I known this, it would have really been helpful, because he kept telling me, and I didn't believe him, because I'd say, well, a classic example was when I'd say, I know what you're thinking. He'd say, I'm really not thinking anything. And I'd say, yes, you are. And I'd say, I know what you're thinking. He goes, I'm really not thinking anything. And I'd say, yeah, you are. And he'd be like, I'm not thinking anything. It turns out they really aren't. There is a box of nothing.
The empty box.
That they have.
The nothing box.
It's called a nothing box.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you this, because this is just great.
I'm jealous
awesome.
of the nothing box. I'm so jealous.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me stop him. Let me turn it back. Because I want you to be able to hear him.
A man's brains.
Wait a minute.
A man's brains.
Oh, hush.
A man's brains are very unique. Men's brains are made up of little boxes, and we have a box for everything. We got a box for the car. We got a box for the money. We got a box for the job. We got a box for you. We got a box for the kids. We got a box for your mother somewhere in the basement. We got boxes everywhere. And the rule is, the boxes don't touch. When a man discusses a particular subject, we go to that particular box. We pull that box out. We open the box. We discuss only what is in that box. All right? And then we close the box and put it away, being very, very careful not to touch any other boxes. Now, women's brains are very, very different from men's brains. Women's brains are made up of a big ball of wire. And everything is connected to everything. Money's connected to the car's connected to your job, and your kids are connected to your mother, and everything's connected to Now, men, we have a box in our brain that most women are not aware of. This particular box has nothing in it. It's true. In fact, we call it the nothing box. And of all the boxes a man has in his brain, the nothing box is our favorite box. If a man has a chance, he'll go to his nothing box every time.
And it really pertains, I promise you, to this, because I'm going to explain to you the difference between, I'm going to show you some of the differences research-wise. I don't want to blow you out when I show you another thing, to what boys' brains and girls' brains being wired differently. Okay, so we can tend to treat them differently just based on the fact that we're in a primarily female profession, and then we don't have all females. We have the blessings of 16 boys and 2 girls. Okay. All right, so Ms. J, girl behavior becomes the gold standard. Boys are treated like defective girls. That's sometimes what we tend to do. And it's because of not having an understanding, and this really so links into conscious discipline, because we have to be fully aware of understanding and owning those differences. There has to be a way to say that. And to know, and I'm really just not even back on. Let me go back to sorry about that. Where you can see it there. It really means that we have to be mindful of that. And so we have to be comfortable with understanding that how we're looking at things, it takes a different seat of how to look at it and be that and do that. So it may be that we have to look at our classrooms differently. The way that boy brains are wired is different from the very beginning. I'm going to show you part of the things behind that. From the very beginning, turns out that their hearing is not as good right from birth. What do we hear guys say? At least I'm pretty sure, I know my husband has it, the selective listening gene. And I'm pretty convinced he actually is deaf in one ear, but I don't ever remember which one it is because whichever side I'm sitting on, he can never hear me. It's like I just think, is it that? He says, how can you not remember which ear it is? Well, I think because he invokes selective listening with me a lot, and he said, you know, my secretary, she always remembers which one it is. Well, she doesn't live with him all the time. I know she lives with him during the day, but not all the time. So she remembers which one it is, but I don't. But again, so we know now. We know this. We didn't know this before. Girls are likely to respond better to discipline strategies such as praise, warnings, things that we're working with them on when we're saying things, maybe as we're talking in communication with them. Boys typically need to have that touch. They need to have that redirection, that refocus, that we're actually taking and moving them over to something. You typically can't tell them. You have to show them what that looks like. You have to take them to that space. We have to talk through, but it's not beating the dead horse. And we know that all young children, if we're talking, that's a great thing, like with conscious discipline, it's very mindful about the words and things we use when we talk about being helpful, being hurtful. When children are young, remember I said they can't abstract think. They're only concrete thinkers. So if we go through an explanation about why they shouldn't do something and what could happen, and it sounds really great, and kids can just be sitting there nodding, you know, like that, you know, and you think, man, that was really a great talk because they were connected and they got, and then they go back and do repeat over, and it's like, why didn't they? And then you go back and you explain yourself all over again, and they nod, and they do, and they may even be able to say back to you verbatim or close enough what you've said, but there's not application for that knowledge. And that's the thing with conscious discipline. You have to practice it. You have to go through it. You have to be a part of what you're doing with them. So the thing about boys tending, if you're talking with a boy, and if you are one of those people that think, okay, I need the respect, so you talk with a boy about saying, I need you to look at me, what happens with that? Does anybody know? How boy brains are wired differently than girls? Boy brains perceive that as confrontational. So if you're saying, okay, now look, and even if you do it in the most respectful, you've downloaded, you're not upset, but you're going to talk with them and you want to look right at them. Usually if you really watch a boy brain, they will look either through you, they'll look over you, they'll look around you, but they definitely won't engage you directly. It's very uncomfortable for them. So if you're talking with them, you may want to sit them beside you, have a conversation about something, anything, and if they have things in their hands. And I always think about the safe place. That's a great place for a boy or a girl who's having a really hard time maybe composing where they can go, but they need things there, and so you know they need softness, but there's also things that they need some rigid things to be able to take and fidget with and do. Okay, because if we don't figure out the differences, and it's not, again, I'm not trying to stereotype, I'm just trying to give us the facts that we know it now, because it's really important to understand it, that we can start to mislabel. And 5 boys for every 1 girl diagnosed with something that's wrong with them. And the classic has been for, 30 years is ADHD. Everybody has. If there is a misbehavior, well, of course, they have ADHD. Or look at the mom or look at the dad, well, of course, they have ADHD. The classic, or they have ADD, or they have all sorts of disorders, or they have a complication of 2 or 3 things. And probably in more cases than not, well, probably in 95% of the cases, it's not true at all. It's just that we're not meeting their needs. And so we've got to figure out this difference in brain wiring is really important. And why would it be that we'd have 5 boys to every 1 girl if it's not for mislabeling? You know, it doesn't stand to reason that all of these children by genetics are all, we've got to figure out how to take their needs better. One of the things I was sharing, and I don't think I said it out loud already, was what I was like growing up as a child. Because remember when I said I had the teacher that sat on her head, you remember that part. I also was a talker. Always, go figure. I was a talker. But I was very impulsive too. And I was a fidgeter, And I was one of those children that couldn't sit still. So when you got the picture of this whole little wrecking ball sitting that couldn't sit. And so not only my leg would go, I'd have leg twitches. I could feel it was almost like tics, like when you know now what nervous tics and stuff feel like. So I was a wreck. And, but I also was a pleaser. And so I didn't want to be in trouble. So I became a self-biter. It's just your group watching this, right? So, but I became a self-biter. I can remember because I didn't want to be in trouble. So but I needed to move, but I couldn't because I'd get in trouble. So I would bite until I almost drew blood in my arms, and then I would pull because I needed to. I was so anxious, and and I can tell you, I can remember the feeling. It was like imploding inside, and that if I didn't bite something or bite down, I can remember biting on pencils. Just almost breaking them in half because it was so intense, because I couldn't move, I couldn't get up. Now, if I had had teachers that were conscious discipline teachers and would have recognized the need to meet my needs, I could have either stood in the back of the classroom, I would have been allowed to get up and move around because I could have attended. But it was a very, very hard, and I couldn't attend at all. My focus was gone. So I would go home, and it was like replaying school all over again because I couldn't learn. So I'd have to learn at home and then go back. So it was very, very hard. So I have a really big appreciation for children that can't sit still. My sister actually was a second grade teacher up until a couple of years ago, and she had the privilege and opportunity to retire. It's something I only dream about. But anyway, saying that she called me and had a similar situation, kind of akin to the boys, but her principal actually didn't like her because her mother-in-law was the school board chair. It's down in a tiny little town down outside of Chattanooga. Anyway, and so saying that, so she called me, she said, "You're not going to believe what her principal had done." I said, "Well, what?" And she said, "He took all the children." Now, this is her words, not mine, because I don't like labeling kids, but she said, "He took all the children that had discipline problems and put them in my classroom." And this was like the first part of August, and she was going to meet him in about a week. And anyway, and I said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, why are you saying it like that?" And I said, "Well, so you don't know any of these children yet, right?" She goes, "No." She said, "Oh, but I know them. I know them." And I said, "Okay, well, you think you know them, but you really don't know them." And I said, "So we're going to talk about conscious discipline," because I talked to her about it before. And I said, "This is a perfect opportunity for me to talk you through this year." And I said, "You can do it." And she said, "I don't think I can do this." And I said, "Yeah, you can." And she said, "Patty, you don't know what it's like." She said, "On top of the fact that I have all of these children in here to have to work with them." And I said, she said, "You know, I've got people who come and evaluate. I've got no child left behind. I'm going to be evaluated 3 times. And I said, "So now let me think about this a minute." I said, "You're going to retire in 2 years, right?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "How long do you have to have really bad scores before you get fired?" She said 3, and I went, "Okay, we got this, let's move forward." So we started on this path, and it was a difficult path. But part of what we did first was modified our classroom, because I have that appreciation for those children that are bouncy, moving kids. And we started moving balls in, and she said, "Don't you think they'll all want to sit on a ball?" And I said, "Oh, no, because those that aren't poking the other children's eyes out finally will be so grateful. They don't care whether they have a ball or not. They'll just be glad the ones that are on the balls are not doing this whole fidgeting and doing." So we put balls and stuff in there, and then I started downloading all these types of positive signs, anything that I could find that had something that made you feel good. And she said, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And I said, "Just keep printing them out and putting them up in your room, because I want you to focus on those things. That's how you're going to be able to change your mindset, is focus on positive things, focus on feeling good, focus on successes." And we started doing little things like the wish well. She didn't start out with the family board. We did that over Christmas when she started doing the Friends and Family board, but we started out with the wish well. And it was, and you all do the wish you well. Does everybody do that? Can I? Okay. So if I show you this, you know what I'm talking about, doing the wish well, the thing, and you've got the children's pictures all the way around here. Okay, so I had Sharon do the faces of all of her children, and then the heart, of course, is the part about wishing you well. And so the process, and when I explained it to her, and if you do it, it's all about knowing how to wish children well. And we know that there's a thing, remember I talked about the brain being so powerful. There's a thing now called heart coherence. And it is the brain and the heart actually really being connected. It's not just 2 organs there. We know that they're very connected. And so doing that, you actually have to physically take. So if you take your hand like this and you touch your heart, you're going to do a physiological change in your brain shift. And so what you would do is you're wishing somebody well. And if you're somebody that you know, that you love, or that's having a hard time and you think about them, and you start to do the breathing, where it's the doing either, whether it's being a star, it's just deep diaphragm breathing. And on the videos that you all saw, did it discuss deep diaphragm breathing? There's a big difference. Did they explain that? Do you all understand what that is? There is a really important thing that you can say, okay, I'm going to breathe. That's not. Deep diaphragm breathing means your shoulders really aren't going to move. It's really your belly's pushing out. So if you're doing, so you're really taking in deep diaphragm breathing, and you're taking that in and you're holding it for a little bit, and then you're taking it back out. So when you have your hand on your heart and you're thinking those thoughts about somebody and you're wishing them well, there's a sense of calm. There's a sense of feeling of connection. And if you do this with the children that you have in your classroom, and say if you have their faces around there, what I had Sharon doing was one of the standard wish well things, which is if there was a child that was absent, then they would take and they would put the child's face in the heart. So then Sharon would have this picture of all the children in the classroom, and we knew that Dana was absent. So we'd have Dana's picture right here, and all the children and my sister would all say, okay, we're going to think about Dana. We know she's not here today. We're going to wish her well. We're going to hope everything's okay and that she's back with us tomorrow. So it's that conscious shift that you're doing on recognizing what that takes and feels like. Now, the really awesome thing about this is once children start connecting, because this is a ritual that you do every day, that once you do something like this, think about it. If Dana knows that she's at home and say she's disconnected or not real connected with her family, or maybe she is, but even if she is, she knows that her school family's thinking about her, because she knows the ritual that happens every single day is if you're absent, that means they're thinking about me, so I know everybody's wishing me well. And that positive connection piece is huge. That makes that, and see, it always, every time I say it, for whatever reason, it always makes the chills go down, but it's such a big part of that, because then children feel that sense of being connected. All right, so you're connected here. The other thing about it is bringing back children. Do you do welcome back? Do you do the routine of welcome back? There is the welcome back. Okay, say they know the exercise of the wish well. So Sharon was doing this. Well, and the interesting thing about it, she kept saying for probably about a month, she said, you know, none of my children are absent. And I said, don't you know that those children that you never want to miss and that you want to miss or whatever, they're never absent. They just don't miss. I think those germs just bounce right off of them or whatever else. But they're not there. And I said, I still want you to practice this. I always think about it. Be ready. So she called me, and she had this little boy that was absent. She said, now go through that again with me. Well, you know, in her zest and enthusiasm, explain to me again what it is that I've got to do with him coming back. And I said, and I actually had found her, it was like a flower that's like a stuffed animal would be, but it was a flower that had like this long stem. And I said, just have him come up into the front of the class, and you have him stand with you, and everybody says you were gone and you were missed. Where would you like your welcome back kiss? And so she said, okay. And so she was writing it down. She said, and then what do I do? I said, well, you take and ask him where he wants to be kissed. He's in control of that. He can say. So she said she did it. And she said it was one of the smaller children she had in the classroom. She said he was standing there, second grade, standing there with his arms like this. And so all the kids were going, you were gone and you were missed. Where would you like your welcome back kiss? We stood there, and she said he got this really big frown. And he said, I don't want it, Miss Swafford. I don't want you to do that. And she said, okay. She said, I'll just gently kiss your head. And so she took the flower and she kissed his head. And so she said he kind of, you know, and then he marched back and he sat himself down at the desk. And she said when he turned around when none of the other kids could see him, he went. So he had to be tough up in front of everybody. But then when he sat back down, it was that connection. And that's what she said. She said, okay, now I'm a believer on that. Because I said, and it's just awesome because he had to be cool. And then it was so there was the connection there. So she went all year long with this. And part of my conversations, because you always have to have a sense of humor in working with children. If you can't laugh every day, you have chosen the wrong job, because kids are a trip, you know, and you just never know what they're going to do, and they're a study, and I'm just always amazed at all the things that they do. I have the privilege and honor of being out in a lot of places, and I love it. And I really spend probably 90% of my time in classrooms with children with behavior issues. And that's what I go all over the place doing, so I love it. And I love the challenge of trying to figure out who it is without the teacher telling me. How do you think I figure out who the children are that misbehave or that are considered or behavior issues? How do I figure it out?
The teacher's
Because they're
reaction.
misbehaving.
Yeah, because I watch the teacher. Teachers don't know I'm watching them, but I watch them. They're my cue, because then I know exactly who it is. It doesn't take me any time to figure out. I don't have to look at the children at all. I just watch the teacher. So doing that, one of the things I shared with Sharon one time, because I said, Sharon, really, because it's not easy. You have to practice it all the time. And as she would talk about it, because she would share with me what her frustrations were, and so I said, okay, look, this is something I want you to take away with you. At the end of your life, and I'm praying you're going to be at those pearly gates, and if God says to you, so, what were your scores on your evaluations? I said, do you really think that's what you think is going to be a question? Or could the question be to you, did you change the life of a child? Did you actually have an impact? Do you have a legacy that you left? I said, wouldn't you rather have a legacy of children that you've changed? Wouldn't you rather be able to live with something than think, man, that was a really great struggle, but got it and understood. I said, at the end of the day, that's what's important. It's being able to know. So she went throughout the year, got to the end of her school year, and she become what I would consider a conscious discipline graduate, in spite of all the things her little sister did with her and all. But anyway, when she got to the end of it, she had all these letters that started coming into her from all the parents saying, thank you so much. My child never wanted to come to school. You have them love school again. Thank you for taking the time to do that. You know, when you hear Ms. Porter say, you know, if you don't have the encouragement, if you don't have a discouraged child, if you have a child that's under stress, they don't learn. And that's what I kept telling her. I said, if you think you're going to change scores based on rote information, you're wrong. If you have children that have behavior issues, they can't connect, they are not going to learn anything, nor are you, because you're going to be learning about trying to figure out how to make it work, and you're going to be stressed. So you're going to be a stressed teacher, they're going to be stressed children because you're downloading stress. It's not going to work. So I said, you have to be able to do it. I said, so even if there's little snippets that they learn, it's going to always be better. It's going to always be better than what they were getting. So can you imagine those children's self-talk? Do you think that their language inside their head changed from being children that were labeled children that couldn't handle themselves, that were behavior issues? Don't you think that their self-worth went up by being, it's just so incredible the difference that it makes. Okay. A little bit more. Some kids, most often boys, may simply fall on the, I like the word robust, more robust end of normal. They need more opportunities to expend energy and aggression, as well as firmer limits. There are no differences in what boys and girls can learn, but it really is big differences in the way that we teach them. So we have to be willing to take and step outside. We don't have boxes. So I don't want to say step outside your box. You got to do something. Step away from thinking, yeah, we got to be that spaghetti piece of knowing. But it really is important that we have to be able to meet boy needs too. Because of the way their brains are wired to verbal functioning, girls are really better at sensory memory, sitting still, listening, tonality, mental crosstalk, and the complexities of reading and writing, the very skills and behaviors that are often rewarded. Got to figure it out. Okay, so any questions of anything I've said so far? Good golly, I've already done it. It's like, okay, I'm only on slide whatever. Does anybody need to take a brief break? Let's do a brain break and get you up, get you moving around. Can you stop that for just, can you? Stop that, yes ma'am. Oh, you need to leave that part.
Oh, no worries, I didn't film that part.
Okay, so all I'm going to do is just go through some of the skills, because I'm looking at that. So I was asking Karen, I was like, I'm pretty sure I won't get through everything that I have, which is more typical than not for me, and that's okay. Because I really do want to clarify, and I do have a tendency to go on stories, but I feel like you attach better to stories than you do what's up here. It's helpful for me to be able to share with you how I've done it and what I've done differently, or what I can do. But composure is really a part of that. That really is the part that's some essence, and you know there's a lot of skills that you practice, but these are things that you just work on all the time. And if you have to do a list, if you want to do all of the skills and have a list on your wall, because truly it's hard to sit there and go, oh, okay, let's see, wait a minute, I've got to I've got to compose myself, I've got to be an encourager, I've got to be whatever. So you've got to think through it all, but if you start to kind of see it, and that's the reason why I had my sister printing out those signs, because I felt like for her it was so much better, because then she could glance at something, look and see it, instead of trying to flip through a book or thinking, wait a minute, where did I write my notes down? It's helpful just to have something up so then you can start practicing what that looks like. Okay, because knowing that self-regulation is so important, and with young children particularly. Do I have any school-age teachers in here at all right now? Okay. Your young ones, push your buttons, that's it. And the interesting thing, because they're trying to find their way. They don't know what that looks like. So that's why it comes in like this little jumbled ball that you have to work with. And sometimes you have them coming in, and then you have the jumbled balls of parents too. So it can complicate things. And so really the more that you download that part of, and it's more the sense of you're regulating, you're being regulated. I can always think about a person that I had that I worked with for several different years. She was really funny, but she also was an Eeyore. That's the best way I can describe her. That it was, if it was going to happen to anybody, it was going to happen to her. And so it was that self-fulfilling prophecy, and she'd always say, and this is a classic example that I can give you. We were going to a conference, I think we were going out to California or something, and so we were meeting at the airport here in Knoxville, and we met there, and she came in, and she's dragging this giant suitcase. That was part one, because she said, I know it's probably going to weigh too much. I just know it's going to weigh too much. I just know it is. And did it? Of course it did. Of course it did. Yeah, because I mean, it was going to, and so here she's unzipping, and she's flinging all this stuff to us. And it's not, so we can all put it. So anyway, so as we're going along, and she gets her bag finally checked in, that passes the test, and then we're going up, and as we're walking toward the security thing, what does she say?
I'm gonna get beeped and have to have that thing.
I'm gonna get beeped. I can tell you, I'm gonna get beeped. And I said, why would you say that? Why would that matter? And she said, I'm just telling you, I just know it, it's gonna happen. So we go through, and we're all on our merry way, and all of a sudden we look, because I thought, where is she? And that's her spread like this, and she came out of there, and it was like, okay, and this was also at the same time when we were in a national bedbug crisis. And so we check into the hotel. What does she say?
I'm gonna have bed.
I'm gonna have bed bugs. What does she have? I don't know whether it really was bed bugs or not, but she had some kind of bugs in her room, and she had to change her room. And so after a while, I just said, you have got to change your focus. You are so focused on everything that's wrong. I mean, I've just never seen anybody like it. And she kept saying, yeah, but it just always happens to me. Well, yeah, it does. Yes, it does. There's a reason for that. And it's the same kind of thing. We really have to focus on, when we're looking at the children, it's not so much on focusing on that part of like, oh my gosh, there they go again, what are they doing, why are they doing this, and not allowing our buttons to be pushed. It's really more about being able to be self-regulated, because if we're downloading calm, that really helps children come in and they feel that sense of, and even if they come in spinning like a little top, if you're calm and you're talking with them, when I work with, listen, I sound like he's my client. When I work with my grandson, it's so wonderful. It is awesome. And I've started from day one, as I talk with him, and it's me downloading calm, but what I practice doing, because I'm a first-time grandmother, and I want him to be calm with me, but I do the breathing, and when I hold him, and he's now starting to go through the phase, because that's not stranger danger, but he wants to be autonomous, but he really can't, he wants to be with mama, and so he'll go to reach, and then he'll kind of go back, and I said, that's all right, and I just start petting him and say, it's all right if you come over to me, and then I'll start to hold him, and I'll hug him, and I'll say, I've got you, buddy, I've got you, you're safe, it's good, but I'm always breathing, and then he just is fine, everything's good. So there's such a sense of self-regulating for us with our children, and that's that part of being a star. And you'll see with Becky Bailey stuff, there's things that'll say, smile, take a deep breath and relax, or stop, take a deep breath and relax. It's written both ways, it doesn't matter. But I feel like when you kind of do the smile with it, it really forces an intentional piece there of making you feel better. Because I always think about when somebody's laughing, and you'll kind of watch, and then you'll start to do the laughing with them, and pretty soon it's that sense of release. It feels so much better. So you know the active calming strategies. I'm not going to go through all of those. But again, those are things that if you've got your safe place set up, I'm assuming you've got the diagrams with all these things there that children can practice and do. But it really is about you learning how to upload that calm part. You can have all these things up and you can have wonderful intentions, but you have to practice it all the time. So really uploading that calm, being a star. And I feel like the more that when you do the deep breathing, but if you hold and kind of hold a count for 3 or 4 and then take and exhale and really exhale out through your mouth, it's very helpful. It's very cleansing and it really kind of gets you where you need to be. Have you seen, in the video series, did she talk about Q-tip?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But quit taking it personally.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like just from us in our spaghetti world and not the waffle world, we
Yeah.
tend to think things personally. It's
Yeah.
kind of, why are they? And when when DJ comes in and opens up that door and she said, why me? Why me? Why me?
Yeah.
You know, and if you are having things are rocking along and then all of a sudden a child shows up and is just having a really horrible day and you'll think, why is this happening? You know, things were going along just fine. the one when you almost are to the point when you think, you're not coming today. Ooh. You're doing a little mental happy dance and you're kind of all around there and then you can hear it down the hallway. You know, and you shift. And you do that pivot and you start to, you go away from your conscious discipline. And so you have to really start breathing and you have to do that conscious piece to think, I can handle this. Of course I can handle it. It's all right. This is not a big deal. That part of being assertive, saying no and being heard and setting those limits respectfully. I can tell you that when I've done probably some of my favorite places to do conscious discipline, I go into programs that are in the empowerment zone because a lot of these children, have you all studied ACEs yet? Have you studied ACEs? There is, and it's come out over the last couple of years, it's really important because, believe it or not, you have ACEs among you in your own program. And this is ACE, the acronym ACE with an S on the end of it, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what we know is, and this was actually a study that's probably a 20-year study, if not longer than that people suspected that if anybody experiences an adverse childhood experience, it wires their brain for how it is they're going to take and respond in life. Now, there are children that can have adverse childhood experiences. They can have a very strong foundation. They can experience it, but because their foundation is just like a piece of concrete, it's firm, it's strong, that they're able to also develop resilience. But then you can have children that can have adverse childhood experiences that their foundation can be very cracked. And so they can't move forward. They're kind of stuck. DJ is a perfect example of, because do you remember what he said that what he was born to, the age of his mom and his dad?
14 and 16.
14 and 16. That's already an adverse childhood experience. Okay, who was he raised by?
Grandma.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's still different, right?
Uh-huh.
So he already had to shift again. And then he talked through, why did he join a gang?
They felt accepted.
Because that was his one connection. That was, even though it wasn't a good connection, that was the only place he felt connected. That's why kids join gangs. If they are not connected, if they're not in a relationship, otherwise, that's what they seek out. Their brain seeks that pattern of being able to feel connected and relational. It's all about those relations. So that's where he was. And then he was in and out of juvenile delinquent school. We heard arrest. I don't know whether you noticed, and it's like I wish I could meet him, but I want to say, when he pauses in those videos, I almost wonder if it's, because it makes me think that he's gonna tear up in some places when he'll stop and he pauses. It's when you'll say, like when they got caught with the guns, even though we weren't doing anything and we weren't doing it, and then he kind of pauses, he kind of nods his head, and I just think that had to be bad.
Yeah.
It had to be something that was scary, even if he acted like he was all that. You know, because I suspect on the outside he acted like he was a really big deal, but he was scared to death on the inside, I would suspect, with a lot of things. So anyway, all of those things, he would be wired with adverse childhood experiences. They actually have 10 things that, and you can Google it, you can pull up the test that you can do, that there are 10 that they've identified, that if you don't have resilience in your life, and if you've experienced a lot of adverse childhood experiences, chances are good that you're wired for lots of exactly what you saw with DJ. There is part of it that goes into more detail. We'll talk about that if there are children that have 6 or more adverse childhood experiences, it's like a 95% chance of being incarcerated. That's pretty
that
high.
makes
You know,
sense.
so it's just, so you can, and among you all, just like me, just like you all, you may have had an adverse childhood experience. And I'm not going, I don't want to go into your personal world at all, but I'm just saying, you may have had those experiences, and those can be things like child abuse, child neglect. It can be divorce. It can be being raised by a single parent. There's just a number of things that it involves. But if you had a lot of people around you that surrounded you with a lot of love, you had a sense of connection, you were connected to a lot of different people, then you probably had a sense of resilience and you're able to bounce back. But you have children that attend Cedar Springs that probably are on pretty shaky ground. And it's not to label, it's just, it's a reality. It has to be here. The interesting thing is people assume that when this study was done, that it was actually done with people that were from low income settings. Not true. All middle class, all of them. And so that's how they took and looked at this very big, and it was like 1,300 people they followed over all of these years, and they came up with this. And this is something that came out of CDC, so it's a really big piece. They're supposed to start doing public service announcements on it. You know, unfortunately here in East Tennessee, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that we have painkiller addiction, opiate addiction with, you understand that in East Tennessee, we're 76% of the entire state. That's pretty scary. That's pretty scary. So it may, it looks different, but it's often you can look at children and figure out there's something, you can't quite put your hand on it, but there's something going on. And that's when you really start to access your conscious discipline things, put them into place, because these children, you may be their one connector for feeling safe. You may be the one piece that you're composed, you're encouraging, all those things that go into allowing them to connect and to come forward with you. They may not feel that away from you. And so it's really, really important. Fear focuses on what you don't want, love focuses on what you do want. If you really start to love, like your kids, love your children, what you're doing and working with them, you're going to be able to feel that sense of connection. You're going to want to be able to feel connected. It's going to help you to create that sense of calm, to be able to do the breathing and all that you see with it. And that piece of being the encourager, building that school family. You can build a school family in a classroom, but you want to build the entire big piece. If people start to see that everybody has a piece of this, they want it too. I mean, it's just like, because they'll say, what are you all doing? They really start to recognize. Has anybody watched the Furman Creek video that's on conscious discipline? You can Google that too. It's just so incredible, because there were some that were doing it, some that weren't, and then everybody started to kind of take notice. And then it's not like a quick fix. It's something that you're working on it and you're steadily growing it, and you see it getting bigger and bigger, and pretty soon everybody's just doing it. And then parents want to know what you're doing, because they'll buy in the success of that. It's like, what was your name that you said you did the balloon with your? And that you had them balloon, was it ballooning that you had?
Yep, doing the balloon.
I love it. But again, you're giving them knowledge, because it allows them to be a better parent when they're wired for conscious discipline as well. And building children, we want to always build in that intrinsic that make them feel good, because we don't want them to feel bad. There's enough things that go on in their little world, and we want to really create that sense of unity. Now, this is a big, big piece that I think for us with spaghetti heads, that it's like really important to recognize how to be a noticer and not a judger. Noticing and not judging. And noticing is really exactly what you see, right? Not what you think, not what your perception may think it is, but it's exactly what you see. And I'll give you an example of how I became a noticer and not a judger, because this was a lesson for me eons ago when I was a director. And I used to always go, this was out in Kroger and Farragut, I would go to Kroger and Farragut at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I would be there for about 3 hours, because I'd see all my families and have conferences all throughout Kroger. I would have seen the truth. And the truth was this: she was over on aisle 12, because that's where the baby formula was. She had her infant and her 4-year-old with her, because she had run out of infant formula. Her husband was out of town. Things happen. So would my response have been different had I seen that versus seeing what I didn't know? Oh, absolutely it would have been. I would have had that sense of grace. I would have gone and helped her. I would have said, tell me what else I could do, instead of being this pompous, whatever, sanctimonious thought about, I can't believe. So I would have responded very differently. That's a big difference. That's a very big difference. So it's very important for us to not draw conclusions about what we don't know. We absolutely don't know what we don't know. We don't know what happens to children when they leave us. We may think we have a clue, but we don't know. We don't know. So it's very important for us to know within our space, within the walls of this church and in these classrooms, what's going on, and that's what you're handling. Now, if parents choose to share information with you, again, take it with a grain of salt, because it's their perspective, right? So it's very important not, and I often think about times when you've got maybe two parents that are involved in, maybe they've already divorced, and so you've got two different sets of parenting skills that are coming in, and one's right and one's wrong, you know, or this one's right, mine's right, his is wrong, or vice versa. So it's really important not to get into a I agree, disagree, whatever. It's just we've got to figure out what's going to work while the child's here. What's going to work best when the child's here. So, all right. So judging and being a noticer instead of a judger. Why do material rewards backfire? What is it we know in conscious discipline, the reason why we don't want to use material rewards? Do y'all ever use material rewards? I'm supposing you don't. No. Because what happens?
Well, they're working for that reward that's physical instead of the reward of contributing to the sense of community in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. And we really want to wire them for not what's on the outside. We want to wire the inside. We want that intrinsic feeling. You know, if you've ever watched a child when they've finally been successful with something, you can just see, they just exude success. You can feel it, they get it, they feel so good about themselves, and that's what you want. You want that feeling of feeling good. And when you have extrinsic rewards, there's no end. It's just, it gets bigger, and then the bigger, and then that's over with, and then you got to move on to another bigger, and it just doesn't stop. And so it may, an extrinsic reward may temporarily stop a behavior. And this is where, as conscious discipline teachers, you can have discussions with families. This is really important, because you can talk with them if you're having issues with children with behavior. I think parents, more times than not, are typically wired for, if you have a really great day today, and if I pick you up, then I'm going to take you to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A. Of course, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A and get an ice cream cone. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. But
if you don't have a good day, I'm going to Chick-fil-A anyway.
That's right. Now I'm going to eat it in front of you. And what happens if you've got a child? Say if a child's disconnecting and falling apart. What would, if there's a child that's having issues with their discipline or with their behavior, how often do they, a young child, how often do they usually disconnect and fall apart? If you had to think about minutes, I mean, if you had to estimate a pretty normal, they're going to disconnect about every 15, 20 minutes, because somebody has smited them, somebody has done something, somebody has upset them because they don't understand, they don't have a skill set yet. They may not have a skill set yet of learning how to be a star, knowing they can go to the safe place. So we have to practice what those skills look like. So in doing that, though, the very thing that you don't want is a parent to come to the door and say, okay, now, we've talked about this all night long, we talked about it, and they're going to have such a good day, because when I pick them up today, I'm going to ask them what kind of day. And if they had a really great day, that means, where do you get to go, Dana? Where are you going to get to go?
Chick-fil-A!
That's right! You're going to get to go to Chick-fil-A! So, and if we know that we have now said that children are typically here on an average of how long a day? Hours.
They can be here
6
for
hours, 9 hours. Okay, so the reality is, if a child is disconnecting every 15 or 20 minutes, are they going to have a successful day? We are so setting them up. And I know that parents aren't doing that intentionally. It's not that they think that's the successful carrot that's dangling there, when in fact we're undermining them. It's undermining. So we don't want to encourage that. We want to be able to say it. And if a parent, I tried not to ever hurt parents' feelings when I've talked to them in the last, 7 or 8 years about it, and I'll say, I know you have the best of intentions, and I so appreciate that. Let me explain to you what's happening and why it's happening, and why we ain't going to have a great day, and they're not going to make it to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or wherever, unless, now, when I've seen parents crumble, because if they come in and if they say, well, can you tell me what kind of day Cameron had? What kind of day did Cameron have? And the teacher goes, well, yeah, they don't have to say much more because it's already, then I know what that means, that we didn't have success. But they're not saying, oh, let me just tell you everything they did wrong. But they're talking about it, and they're saying, but, you know, we're talking through, we're working on it, and you know, and then the child starts to melt down because they know, because the parent goes, well, I guess you know what that means. And then the child melts down, and then the parent says, what, 4 times than not. All right, get up. I'll go and take you to McDonald's to get whatever you want. Just get up and walk down the hallway and get to the car and go. So now it's undermined, you know, and so it's a repeat. So that's why you have repeat offenses that just keep happening over and over and over again, because it's not giving them skill set of what they're responsible for, all the things they need to do. So we really need to explain to parents about, we're not going to, you know, let's just kind of dispense with that. We're going to do this from point A to point B. We're going to work on, let's see what kind of day we have. I don't want to sell children out. Again, if they feel safe with you, they're here, they feel safe, they're calm, they're doing all that, and then we take the rug out from under them every afternoon when parents show up and ask what the day was like, and we say, well, you know, we're really trying, but they did this and this and this. I can tell you that any parent who's worked all day long, who's tired, who goes to leave with their child, do you think that it's going to be happy talk in the car? It's not. It's going to be, you know, just one time I would really like to pick you up and get a good result. You know how hard it is that I go to work all day, because they're not a conscious disciplined person. Remember, they are so downloading fear, they're downloading anger, they're downloading all of these things that even if you practice it here, then it's what is it that's happening there. So it's just really important to kind of take and manage what those conversations look like, so we can get them connected to conscious discipline. So it really is the power of connection, building those relationships, eye contact. But remember, when I'm talking about little boys, expect besides you, patting, doing, touching, presence, playful situation. Boys love play. Boys absolutely love play. I'm fascinated. My grandson exhausts me. Once he's now started crawling, I'm hooked. It's like I just think I can't do these all the time. Now I know why. A grandparent can go, and you're picking him up when? Because I have to go take a bath now. But it is. He's so wired for that whole movement and all over the place. Okay. Oh gosh, see, I just can't get through all this. Building the relationships, you know this. Let me get to it because I want to show you this part. Dana had said that she's doing I Love You rituals. Are any of y'all doing the I Love You rituals in your classrooms to connect? It's really important. Why are those I Love You rituals? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a quote, Becky Bailey, I Love You ritual. Why are those so important? What's the big deal about that?
Connections on the outside.
Wire. Connections on the inside. That's right. And when we talk about the brain seeking patterns, when they know that something's coming, and you know, it kind of speaks to if there's a favorite song or a favorite something that children do, or a favorite book, and you read the book and you get to the end of it and you think, okay, now go read it again, and you read it again and they'll go, did you read that again? And you're thinking, how many times they could hear it forever? Because they know what's happening, right? They know what's coming up. They know, so it just speaks to the fact that they need. Their brain seeking their pattern. I mean, their brain is seeking those patterns, and so it needs to know what's happening next. The I Love You rituals is the same thing. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I had somebody cry this morning really bad. So I don't want to make you cry, but this is a very sweet way of looking about how it forges the connection, but it really kind of takes you through, it's like a full circle. And so I'll tell you the very last part of this will. It'll just make you cry, but I'm just preparing you. I'm trying to let you know why. But I think there's such value in it because this is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I'm going to show it to you, but then I'm going to talk to you about if I do it with my grandson. Isn't that a shock? You're going to hear about him whether you like it or not.
And how old is he?
He is now almost 11 months.
Y'all don't know I'm doing this with the babies now too.
That's the reason why I did the things on Baby Doll Circle Time and the Story Hand are really good things to practice with these kids. Because again,
I Love You rituals are designed to build bonds between people so that each person in the interaction feels a sense of connection. Connection with parents, connection with teachers, and connection between children. This sense of connection creates a biochemistry that optimizes the function of our brain.
How you doing? My name is DJ Baptiste.
Can you get on your knees? Twinkle, little star, what a wonderful child you are. With bright eyes and expression, talented personality. Twinkle, little star, what a wonderful child. One more beer hug for Mr. DJ.
I always try really hard to hold it together, and the harder I try, the more I always go, okay, I'm not going to cry. Yes, I really am going to cry. But I think it paints the picture. I mean, it really does talk about it. It's like it shows you the power of connection. Coming full circle, this is what I do with my grandson, and I love it because I've done it from the very beginning. And I started out with him when he was just a few days old, and would lay him on the changing table so he could lay on his back. And I do it where he's laying on his back, and I always do it in his little hands like that. And I do, nice eyes and nice round cheeks from his head, talented child from his head to his feet. And it's funny now because now being 10 months old and crawling, if he's crawling, I'll go twinkle, twinkle, like that. He will stop. He will turn around and he will lay back, and he has his little hands ready, and it's just this intense look. And then he loves something about his feet. And when I do the thing, talented child from head to, and he'll do his little feet up for me to get his feet. But it's just so cool because it is that thing of just the whole. It's like Pavlov's dog brain, but it's that relational piece, that piece of being connected. So I do that with him. I do the singing. The one that my husband loves is, the Are You Sleeping? Remember, Are You Sleeping? Are You Sleeping, Brother John? Well, I do Are You Sleeping? Or no, I do You Are Sleeping, You Are Sleeping, Yes You Are. It's just words I made up. But I'm holding him, and I said I can't decide if it's the I Love You ritual or if he doesn't like me singing that song because he just huddles in and he's out. I mean, it's not anything, and he can be, because he's very active, and he can do the whole, he'll do the, like if I take him and say, oh, it's nap time, and I'll say, I've got you, and so and he'll be bowing his back, and then I'll start singing, and he just curls right in and tucks in and is gone. And my husband said, if I hadn't seen you do that, I wouldn't have believed it, because he said it was like he just goes limp. And I said, that's because he feels safe. He feels safe, he can relax, and he's exhausted. I mean, you know, he never wants to give it up, but it's incredible, and so I love it. Here's your kind of Piglet. How do you spell love? You don't spell it, you feel it. You feel it. That really describes conscious discipline in so many ways, because it truly is about that sense of calming your breathing, what you're downloading to children. You download what you want. You know, you're focusing on what you want, not what you don't want. And it really helps that sense of throughout the thing. So, okay, I see 5 minutes. I've really talked about difficult children, even though this is the same kind of, it's the same kind of talk with how you take an handle. Is there any question that you all have that I could answer for you, or give you a strategy, or something that you may be confused about, or that I can, if we turned off the camera, you can ask me. Yeah. Yes, Doug?
Well, the hardest part right now is the 2-year-olds coming in who were just scared. And I went in there to do music, and they're all crying, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And then I would started doing music with hand motions. I did conscious discipline. I also did other things. And this one little girl, she was so distraught. But she started doing the hand motions. She still had tears coming down. Her nose was all snotty. Her face was all red. And she started doing hand motions. And I thought, this is great. But the minute the music stopped, she'd cry again. I'm like, getting the music ready, you know, as fast as I could. But it's like once they, you know, you think, there's no way I'm going to have success in this. They're all upset. And then you start doing that music, you start doing the hand motions, that repetition, and they respond to it. And
why is it the music that children attach to music so well?
Repetition,
it's that brain syncing pattern. I mean, it's something that, and it's a calming, it's a soothing thing for them to be able to hear songs and do. So that's why they attach to it so well. Children remember things better too. We know that they're rhythmic by nature, and so when they hear songs and things, they attach to what a concept is so much better through song or through poems, through anything like that, because that's how that brain seeks that.
It's hard when you're not doing music and you do have a lot of very upset, and you're trying to calm them. Like
but now music doesn't just have to happen with.
Right. I mean, but I was able to, you know, they had their teachers with them, and I was, you know, it's those first few days. It's just like you said, it's a process.
Oh my gosh.
It's just a process, but I guess I feel like we need advice though on those kids that are having such a hard time calming down. And of course, we can do the singing and the rituals. But you were also talking about the that with the hands. What was it you were doing with the hands and the feet?
You mean with the twinkle twinkle, with the? Well, I mean just the motions of doing the touching, because it really is. You can tend to think that because some children will go, you know, like don't touch me, and they'll pull away and jerk. Children, because if they're not conditioned to what touch feels like, you may think, oh my gosh, okay, well they've got sensory integration because they pulled away. It just means they're not conditioned to it. They're not used to it. So you really have to start out very tenderly with them. And so if I knew that there was a child that was responding, and if they start to do, because children's personal space, it's like a magic bubble that's around them. And if you start to enter a space that children aren't used to, and they're intimidated by you coming in, what do they typically do? They'll pull away. They start to step back. So you may step up beside them. You may come up behind. You may gently do your hand. And just that part of touching, and when they start to actually feel like you're connected to them, you'll be able to feel that sense of all these muscles in here. Because when there's a child that's really tense, it's like a rock. You can touch them, and it's like, oh my gosh, they are so intense. But if you start to kind of do that whole, and it's me really looking at a child and connecting and reassuring, and I'll look around at others, because I don't want this to be my whole focus. I don't want them to think that I'm like, you know, okay, so I've got them all right here. It's really more about me taking, and then I may look so they can still feel me touching and doing it, and then I'm looking and talking with the others. When I've worked with, like I said, I love to go in the empowerment zone, and it's so funny because I'll go back and visit, because it's talking about children on teaching them how to be helpful, And I teach them to have language, because oftentimes we'll say use your words. We use that, throw that classic thing out
You
there.
gotta give them the word.
You gotta give them, they don't have a clue. And so we practice what it looks like. And so I'll mumble with them, and I'll be in the floor, because the visual I can give, when DJ was describing about the gangs and stuff, that's what a lot of preschool classrooms in the empowerment zone look like. It's like walking into gangs, because they already are fight. Well, the empowerment zone is the part of Knoxville that has all the low-income housing. Okay, so that's where I spend, because I can tell you, can you imagine that I would have a lot of behavior issues? And why do you think I have a lot of behavior issues?
They have chaos.
They have a lot of chaos. Yeah, and their experiences, they're wired for that fight.
Yeah.
And so I can walk into screaming, yelling, and it's not the adults, it's the children. But I walk in and the adults are like,
Yeah.
it's like this deer in the headlights look. I mean, they are just so checked out because they don't know what to do. And so, and then I'll have some, though, that think they have to rule with an iron fist.
Right.
And they'll be like, I've got 5 in timeout, or I've got this, and it's like, oh, that's a fun place to be, really. It's like, wow. So what I usually do first is I just go sit on the floor and start playing. And kids are fascinated, because I usually start a dramatic play, because I'll start saying, I am so hungry. Can somebody fix me something to eat? And they'll be like, they're going to walk away, and I'll say, somebody's got to, I really need something to eat. Tell me what I can eat. And they'll go, well, do you have any hamburger? I'll start going through whatever it is, and they'll go, yeah, and they'll start doing things. Well, now, children are nosy. I don't care how disconnected they are, they're nosy. They'll start listening, they'll watch it. Before long, it's like the gang has huddled in with me, and they're all about fixing and doing it, and the teacher's just kind of standing there and saying, I don't know what you did, and I said, I'm playing with them. I'm actually playing with them. That's what I'm doing. And I'm downloading. I'm fine with that. And if they start to get, because they can get really over, they can be, what's the word, when you get overstimulated. Yes, overstimulated. They can get overstimulated very quickly, because it's kind of like, because they want to do it. Wait a minute. Well, I want to take her order, or I want to do, and I'll go, okay, no, wait a minute, somebody else. I know somebody else is hungry. And so I just start extending play. Somebody else can order. So now pretty soon we've got 2 or 3 tables of people that are eating. Somebody else is cooking. Somebody's washing the dishes. Somebody's doing things. And it's like, it's so calm, because they're having fun and they're playing. Yeah, they all have jobs. And and I didn't approach the job thing. I am telling you. And you remember when DJ said, and he actually remembered being the line leader when he was in kindergarten?
Yeah.
We can't have a line leader. Children, and so it's kind of like this carrot that they're never going to get. And if you have 10 or 12 kids, well, the line leader may have to wait for 3 weeks or 4 weeks before they actually get it, for this revered line leader. And that's why every child needs to have a job. Every job needs to be equally revered. It needs to be so important. And there was a teacher that was doing conscious disciplines. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. She was so good, and she had all these jobs up. And the little boy, one of the little boys, and I was in doing an observation, and he said, and it wasn't for behavior. I was doing a practice observation that we're required to do anyway. And he looked at me and he said, because he was watching me write, he said, what are you writing? And I said, well, I'm writing down watching you all play. And he went, oh, and he goes, I'm the electrician. Oh, you are? I said, so what does an electrician do? And he said, we're going to go outside. You can watch. And I went, oh, okay, great. And so they were all, getting ready to go. And so here all the kids are all lined up, and he's like looking to make sure I am watching. And he comes over and he's watching, and then he flips the light switch out, and he went, I got this, and I'm the best electrician ever. Yeah. But it was so cool, because it was obvious that the way that she made the children feel, everybody had equal importance, everybody was a contributor. She was a great conscious discipline teacher. And so it really is about practicing those things. But it's, and again, it's not, because it's a really big brain shift when you're doing it, but I can tell you that the more that you practice and do it, and the more that you have this throughout your day, you're going to find such success that people are going to be able to come in and go, what are you doing? What? It's called what? And there are things on the website that are for parents that they can go in. There are conscious clips that parents can use. She's done a lot of conscious clips that have things on reframing, so a parent can see how they may be handling the situation and how they can change what they're saying and doing. And so there's all sorts of things that are very helpful with it. But you think of it? I know it's 4:33. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I had a question about, the thing about conscious discipline is that need to be present and right there with the child. So how do you, and it said taking time and slowing down. So how do you conscious discipline a classroom full of children when you're focused on maybe the one or two who are having a conflict and you're giving them those words and helping them find that composure, and then somebody behind you just got punched in the face? I mean,
Okay, so what I would do is
that was my morning. So.
Because this is the thing. What you'll find is if you can do, if you like to do storytelling, because this is what I typically do, then, and I will weave a story about children. I'll never use names in the classroom, but I'll weave a situation that I observed. And maybe I'll weave what that looks like, and I'll do it during my group time. And it may be a very brief group time. You know, in starting out, kids just don't attend and don't. But if you're really good, kids will be all in. They are like all in on it. So I may weave a story about what do we do to take care of each other. What is it in our classroom? It's so easy not to have rules. The one rule you really need to have is what? What is it about? Safety. About safety. It's about my job is to keep you safe. Your job is to
help keep it that way.
Help keep it that way. And then is it helpful or is it hurtful? Because those two things are same. And so if I have Sally and Susie over rolling in the floor over here, and I'm trying to manage that, and I hear that happen, and that's when I'm going to turn and say, what?
Is that helpful?
Is that helpful or is that hurtful? And they're going to go, right? So then you're trying to attend to this, and you may say, I'm going to have to stop over here. I'll be right back in just a minute. Then you go over and you do that, but you're going to always talk to who first?
The victim.
You talk to the victim first. You don't have to go into a long thing because you're really just trying to separate to make sure there's no blood, there's no anything, because you're going to go back to it. But then you're going to start to model, because I always talk to kids and I'll say, okay, I saw your face doing, or I looked at you and you were doing this and you were mad. It seemed like you were really mad. Can you show me? Because they'll go, they can't get it out and do it. Okay, so you may have to make an assumption, but if they're in the block area and somebody pulled one toy, did somebody take something? All right, so let's. And usually what I find is, more times than not, the children that are typically the repeat offenders are the ones that all children sell out all the time throughout the classroom. That child doesn't have to be located in any space, and they'll say, Dana did it! Dana did it! And Dana's not anywhere close to what happened, but because Dana's been the primary offender, then she's the perfect out. And so and what happens too is the teacher starts to assume Dana did it. It's so incredible how it changes. So you really have to keep exercising your brilliance, to keep deep breathing, because if there's conflict and you're breathing and you're thinking, okay, and then you're going to go over it, you have to really calmly handle it, because if you do the whole, all right, okay. Because if you start to engage like that, then you just totally undermine exactly what you're trying to teach. So I think you have to have strategies on talking through how you take care of each other. I used to always encourage people about having field trips in their own space. And you may need to look at what your classroom is set up like. You may need to look what kind of stuff you have out, because that's really important. And if there's too much for children at a certain age, it may be that you introduce things gradually. It may be that you have too much. So there can be all sorts of things, but it's more a matter of. I'm sorry, I know y'all need to.
I'm sorry. I'll tell you what. If y'all got questions that you'd like for Patty to kind of address, if you'll email them to me, and I'll let the rest of the staff know that as well, then I'll send them on to her, and then we can get like some more specific type questions, because I know that you guys are scheduled to head home too. But we thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You got